The Torino mansion sat like a mausoleum on the hill overlooking Brooklyn, its windows dark despite the early evening hour. Inside, the silence was broken only by the soft sounds of children crying, muffled by thick walls and thicker grief that had settled over the house like fog. Maria Santos climbed the marble staircase with practiced quiet, her cleaning supplies tucked under one arm, her heart heavy with the weight of what she witnessed daily in this house. At 42, she had worked for wealthy families throughout Manhattan and Brooklyn, but she had never encountered anything quite like the Torino children. 7-year-old Alessandro sat in the corner of his bedroom, knees drawn to his chest, tears streaming silently down his pale cheeks. His 5-year-old sister Sophia lay curled on her bed, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days, her small body shaking with quiet sobs. Their father, Don Vincent Torino, was one of the most feared men in New York. He could command armies of soldiers, control vast territories, and bend judges to his will. But he couldn't comfort his own children, couldn't fill the void left by their mother's death 6 months ago. Maria paused in the doorway, watching Alessandro try to muffle his crying with his small fists. In the 3 months she'd been working for the Torino family, she had never once seen Don Vincent enter his children's bedrooms. He provided for them materially, ensuring they had the finest clothes, the best tutors, every luxury money could buy. But he gave them no warmth, no affection, no acknowledgement of their pain. "Mr. Alessandro," Maria said softly, setting down her supplies and entering the room. "Why are you sitting on the floor?" The boy looked up at her with eyes that seemed far too old for his young face. "I don't want to mess up the bed. Papa gets angry when things aren't perfect." Maria's heart clenched. She glanced toward Sophia's room, where the little girl was trying to sing herself to sleep with a lullaby she barely remembered. "Your mama used to sing to you," Maria said, kneeling beside Alessandro. It wasn't a question. She had learned the children's routines, their fears, their desperate longing for the woman who would never return. Alessandro nodded, fresh tears spilling over every night. "She would sit on my bed and sing the song about the little bird who flew home. But I can't remember all the words anymore. And Sophia, she cries because she's scared of the dark. But Papa says nightlights are for babies. Mama used to leave the hallway light on." Maria looked at this beautiful, broken little boy and made a decision that would change everything. She stood and walked to Sophia's room, where the little girl was still attempting to sing through her tears. "Miss Sophia," Maria said gently, "would you like to come to your brother's room? I think he needs some company." Sophia's eyes widened. "We're not supposed to leave our rooms after bedtime. Papa has rules sometimes," Maria said, lifting the small girl into her arms. "The most important rules are the ones written on our hearts, not in books." She carried Sophia to Alessandro's room and sat on his bed, gathering both children against her sides. They stiffened at first, unused to physical affection, but gradually relaxed into her warmth. "Now," Maria said softly, "tell me about this song your mama used to sing." It was in Italian, Alessandro said hesitantly, "about a little bird who got lost but found his way home, because his family's love was like a light guiding him back." Maria smiled and began to sing, her voice soft and clear in the quiet room. "Piccolo uccello, vola via, cerca la tua famiglia." Little bird, fly away, search for your family. The children's eyes widened in recognition and wonder. Maria continued, "The lullaby, verses about love that transcends distance, about family bonds that death cannot break, about finding home in the hearts of those who care for you." "How do you know Mama's song?" Sophia whispered when Maria finished. "Because all Italian mothers know that song. We sing it to our babies so they'll never forget that love follows them wherever they go." "Are you a mama?" Alessandro asked. Maria's expression grew soft and sad. "I was once. I had a little boy named Miguel. He would be about your age now." "Where is he?" "He's with the angels, like your mama. But I carry him in my heart every day, just like you carry your mama." That night, for the first time in 6 months, the Torino children fell asleep without crying. Maria stayed with them until their breathing grew deep and peaceful, then tucked them in properly and turned on the hallway light before returning to her work. She was polishing the banister when Don Vincent returned from his evening business. At 38, he was still handsome in the cold, classical way that made women forget to breathe. But his face was carved from marble, his eyes empty of everything except calculation and control. "The house seems quieter tonight," he observed, removing his coat and hanging it in the front closet with mechanical precision. "The children are sleeping," Maria replied, continuing her work without looking at him. "Good. I have business associates coming tomorrow evening. I'll need the downstairs perfect." "Of course, sir." Don Vincent started toward his study, then paused. "Maria, in the future, please ensure the children understand that bedtime means staying in their respective rooms." I noticed Sophia's bed hadn't been slept in. Maria stopped polishing and looked at him directly. The children were frightened. "Sir, they needed comfort. They need discipline, structure. The world is a harsh place, and they must learn to face it without weakness. They're 5 and 7 years old. They've lost their mother. A little comfort won't make them weak." Something dangerous flickered in Don Vincent's eyes. "I don't recall asking for your opinion on child rearing." "No, sir, but I'm offering it anyway." The silence stretched between them like a wire under tension. Finally, Don Vincent spoke. "You've been in this house for 3 months. In that time, you've never overstepped your boundaries. Why start now?" Maria set down her cloth and faced him fully. "Because those children upstairs are dying a little more each day, not from illness or injury, but from loneliness, from believing that their pain doesn't matter to anyone. Their pain will make them stronger. Their pain will make them hard. There's a difference." Don Vincent studied her face, and Maria wondered if she had just talked herself out of a job. But she had buried one child already. She couldn't stand by and watch 2 more wither away from emotional neglect. "My children are not your concern," he said finally. "Every child is my concern," Maria replied, "but especially children who cry themselves to sleep every night because no one has told them they're loved." Don Vincent turned and walked away without another word, but Maria noticed he didn't forbid her from comforting the children again. It was, she thought, a beginning. Over the following weeks, Maria Santos discovered that healing broken children required the patience of a saint and the determination of a general. Alessandro and Sofia had learned to hide their emotions so well that drawing them out felt like coaxing flowers to bloom in winter. But slowly, carefully, she began to build bridges across the gulf of grief that separated them from the world. It started with small things. A nightlight shaped like a star that she placed in Sofia's room, disguised as a safety measure rather than comfort. Extra time spent reading to Alessandro, who devoured stories about brave knights and magical kingdoms where parents didn't disappear. Hot chocolate before bed, served in the kitchen while she finished her evening tasks. "Mrs. Santos," Sofia said one evening, using the title she'd invented without prompting, "why don't you live here like us?" Maria was teaching the little girl to braid her doll's hair, a skill that Sofia's governess had deemed unnecessary, but that made the child feel important and capable. "Because I have my own little apartment, and everyone needs a place that belongs just to them." "Is it lonely?" Maria paused in her demonstration. "Sometimes. But I have pictures of people I love, and books, and a garden where I grow herbs. And I have you and Alessandro to take care of, which makes me very happy." "Happier than Papa?" It was a loaded question from a 5-year-old who had learned to read adult emotions with survival-level accuracy. "Your Papa carries a lot of responsibility. That can make people seem sad even when they're not. He was different before Mama died," Alessandro said from the kitchen table, where he was working on arithmetic problems. "He used his smile sometimes. He taught me to ride my bicycle." "What changed?" Maria asked gently. "He said that being sad was dangerous, that people would think we were weak and try to hurt us." Alessandro's pencil moved across the paper in careful calculations. "But I think being sad is better than being nothing." Maria felt her heart break a little more for these children who had learned such hard lessons so young. "Your Papa is trying to protect you the only way he knows how," she said. "But maybe we can show him that there are other ways to be strong." If you're moved by Maria's dedication to healing these broken children, please subscribe to help support Our storytelling and production costs. The test came 2 weeks later, on a Thursday evening when Don Vincent returned home to find his children in the kitchen with Maria. Flour dusted across every surface, laughter echoing off the walls. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice cutting through their joy like a blade. Alessandro and Sofia immediately stepped back from the counter, their faces falling into the careful masks they wore around their father. "We're making cookies, Papa," Sofia said, quietly, like Mama used to. Don Vincent's expression darkened. "I've told you not to speak of your mother. It serves no purpose, sir," Maria interrupted, stepping between the children and their father. "They were helping me prepare dessert for tomorrow's dinner party. I thought it would be educational. He repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "Is teaching my children to act like servants part of their education? Teaching your children that work has dignity, that creating something with their hands brings joy, that sharing tasks builds relationships. Yes, I consider that educational." The kitchen fell silent except for the timer ticking down on the oven. Alessandro and Sofia stood frozen, waiting for the explosion they'd learned to expect when adults disagreed. But instead of anger, something else flickered across Don Vincent's face. Confusion, maybe, or recognition. "Mama said baking was like magic," Sofia whispered, so quietly Maria almost didn't hear her. "She said when you make something for people you love, you put a little piece of your heart in it." Don Vincent stared at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time in months. "She said that. She made us birthday cakes shaped like castles," Alessandro added, gaining courage from his sister's boldness. "She said every child deserved to feel like royalty on their special day." For a moment, Don Vincent's carefully constructed mask slipped, revealing the grief he'd been hiding beneath layers of anger and control. Then he straightened, rebuilding his walls with visible effort. "Clean this mess," he said roughly. "Both of you. Then go to your rooms." After the children left, heads down and shoulders slumped, Maria began cleaning the kitchen with methodical precision. She could feel Don Vincent watching her from the doorway, but she didn't speak until the last dish was washed. "They miss her," she said without turning around. "Missing her won't bring her back. No, but remembering her will keep her alive in their hearts." And what happens when those hearts get broken again? When they learn that love is just another weakness for enemies to exploit? Maria turned to face him, seeing past his anger to the fear beneath. What happens if they never learn to love at all? What kind of victory is survival without joy? Don Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "In my world, joy is a luxury few people can afford. In any world, joy is what makes life worth living. Your children aren't going to be children much longer. Do you want their memories of this time to be of a father who protected them from feeling anything, or of a father who taught them that feeling everything was worth the risk?" That night, Maria was finishing her work when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Don Vincent appeared in the hallway, carrying a tray with 3 cups of the hot chocolate she'd been making for the children. "They're still awake," he said awkwardly. "I thought perhaps you could show me how you get them to sleep without crying." Maria smiled and took one of the cups. "It's not magic, Mr. Torino. It's just love with consistency and patience mixed in. I don't know how to do that anymore. Then we'll learn together, one bedtime story at a time." As they walked toward the children's rooms, Maria realized that healing wasn't just for Alessandro and Sofia. Sometimes, broken fathers needed just as much care as broken children. The only difference was that fathers had forgotten how to ask for help. 6 months after Maria Santos had first heard the Torino children crying themselves to sleep, the mansion on the hill had transformed into something resembling a home. Laughter echoed through halls that had known only whispers, and the kitchen had become the heart of a house that was learning to beat again. Don Vincent stood in the doorway of the dining room, watching Maria help Alessandro and Sofia set the table for dinner. It was a simple domestic scene, the kind that happened in households across America every evening. But in the Torino house it felt revolutionary. "Careful with the glasses, Miss Sofia," Maria said gently. "Remember, we hold them by the stem, not the bowl." "Like this?" Sofia asked, concentrating fiercely on her task. "Perfect. Your mama would be proud of how grown up you're becoming." It no longer startled Don Vincent. to hear his late wife mentioned in casual conversation. Maria had slowly reintroduced Isabella's memory into their daily life, not as a source of pain, but as a celebration of love that continued beyond death. "Papa," Alessandro called, noticing his father in the doorway. "Come see how I can fold the napkins. Mrs. Santos taught me 3 different ways." Don Vincent approached the table, examining his son's work with the same attention he gave to business contracts. "Very impressive. Your mother always said presentation was as important as the meal itself." "She did?" Sophia asked eagerly. "What else did she say?" For the first time in a year, Don Vincent didn't change the subject. "She said that sharing a meal was sharing life with the people you love. That's why she insisted we eat together every night, even when I was busy with work." Maria smiled and continued setting out silverware, letting father and children rediscover each other without interference. "Can we eat together tonight?" Alessandro asked hopefully. "All of us, like before." Don Vincent glanced at Maria, who nodded encouragingly. "I believe Mrs. Santos has prepared something special." Dinner that evening was a revelation. Don Vincent found himself telling stories about his children's early years, about Isabella's pregnancy cravings, and the chaos of bringing twins home from the hospital. Alessandro and Sophia listened with the hunger of children who had been starved. "Of family history, tell them about the birthday party," Maria suggested when the conversation lulled. "Which birthday party?" Don Vincent asked. "Their 4th birthday, when Isabella hired the magician, who turned out to be terrified of children." For the first time in months, Don Vincent laughed, really laughed, the sound rusty from disuse, but genuine. He kept backing away every time you got close to him. He told his children. Your mother finally had to stand behind him to keep him from running out the door entirely. "Was it a good party anyway?" Sophia asked. "It was perfect," Don Vincent said softly, "because your mother made everything perfect just by caring about it." After dinner, as had become their routine, Maria supervised the children's bath time while Don Vincent retreated to his study. But instead of losing himself in work as usual, he found himself standing at the window, thinking about the conversation. At dinner, "Mr. Torino," Maria appeared in the doorway, her coat over her arm. "The children are ready for bed. They're asking if you'll tell them a story tonight." It had taken months for Don Vincent to become comfortable with bedtime routines, to learn that his presence could comfort rather than intimidate. Now it was the part of the day he looked forward to most. "What story would you like to hear?" he asked, settling into the chair between their beds. "Tell us about when you met Mama." Alessandro said immediately. "Again, I told you that story last week." "Please, Papa," Sophia added. "It's our favorite." So Don Vincent told them again about meeting Isabella at a charity gala, about how she'd challenged him to dance even though he'd claimed he didn't know how, about the way she'd laughed when he'd stepped on her toes. "She wasn't afraid of you?" Alessandro asked, as he always did. "She was the only person who wasn't afraid of me," Don Vincent replied. "She said fear was boring, and she preferred people who were interesting." "Are we interesting, Papa?" Sophia asked sleepily. "You're the most interesting people I know," he said, tucking her blanket around her shoulders. "You're brave and kind and funny, just like your mama." After the children were asleep, Don Vincent found Maria in the kitchen, preparing tomorrow's breakfast with the efficiency that characterized everything she did. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me back my children. For teaching me how to be their father again." Maria smiled and continued kneading dough for fresh bread. "You were always their father, Mr. Torino. You just forgot how to show it." "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if I loved them too much, losing them would destroy me the way losing Isabella nearly did. And now I understand that not loving them was destroying us all." Don Vincent moved to the kitchen island, watching Maria work. "I have something to ask you. Something important." Maria paused in her kneading, sensing the weight in his voice. "The children need stability, consistency, someone who will always be here for them, no matter what happens in my world." "Mr. Torino, I'm not asking you to marry me," he said quickly. "I'm asking you to be their guardian, legally, officially, so that if anything happens to me, they'll never be alone again." Maria stared at him, flour dusting her hands, tears beginning to form in her eyes. I'm asking you to be their mother, Maria, not because they need a replacement for Isabella, but because they need someone who loves them the way you do. And you? She asked quietly. What do you need? Don Vincent was quiet for a long moment, considering a question he'd never allowed himself to ask. I need to know that the most important thing I've ever protected will be safe when I'm gone. I need to know that Alessandro and Sofia will grow up understanding that love isn't weakness. It's the only strength that really matters. Maria wiped her hands on her apron and walked around the island to face him. Those children saved my life as much as I saved theirs. Yes, I'll be their guardian. I'll be their mother. I'll love them and protect them and make sure they never forget how much their real mother loved them. 6 months later, the adoption papers were finalized in a quiet ceremony attended by a judge who owed Don Vincent more favors than he could count. Alessandro and Sofia stood beside Maria in their best clothes, holding her hands while she promised to love and protect them for the rest of her life. That night, as Maria tucked them into bed in the house that had finally become a home, Sofia asked the question that had been building for weeks. Mrs. Santos, Mama Maria, are you happy? Maria smiled and kissed the little girl's forehead. I'm happier than I ever thought I could be again. Even though your first little boy is gone, he's not gone, sweetheart. He's right here with Miguel and Alessandro and you. All the children I love living together in my heart. Is there room for Papa too? Maria glanced toward the doorway, where Don Vincent stood listening to their conversation with an expression of contentment she'd never seen on his face before. There's always room for family, she said. That's the wonderful thing about love. The more you give away, the more you have. As she turned off the lights and left the children to sleep peacefully, Maria reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come to this house as a maid hired to clean and organize. Instead, she had found a family that needed healing, children who needed love, and a purpose that made every sacrifice worthwhile. Sometimes, she thought, the most important job in the world was simply knowing when to offer a hug. Thank you for following this touching story of healing, love, and found family. If you were moved by Maria's journey and the transformation of the Torino household, please subscribe to help support our production efforts and bring you more heartwarming tales like this.